this is What Our Friends Are For and Try Not to Remember by Single is Gold 15. Well, it wasn't good. Nope, not at all. On a scale from 1 to not good, this was very much on the not good end of the scale. Granted, this mission wasn't supposed to be easy. No one ever said it was. But even with all the risk involved, all the careful time moving parts, and the chance of being caught, Lance never allowed himself to consider that they, actually might be. After all, it was him and Keith on this mission. As much as they bicker and couldn't stand each other back at the castle, even they had to begrudgingly admit they worked well together out in the field. And honestly, Lance may have been counting on that. He was banking on him and Keith to work together well enough, to be stealthy enough, to be adaptable enough to carry this mission through. But alas, it was not to be. Now, God only knew how many hours after they'd been caught by the drones, Lance paced their empty cell, corner to corner, 9 steps. The repetition helped him quell the dread and anxiety a bit, but with every past loop, he knew that a chunk of past time could only mean bad things. Step, 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 step. His wrist ached from pulling at the cuffs that keep his hands together in front of him. Even through his armor, that didn't stop him from tugging at them, though, in the vain hope that one of the times he tried, they would just pull apart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Keith has been gone for a while now, longer than the second time he'd been taken, but shorter than the first, which could mean a number of things really in his life. Kept obsessing over it, things he couldn't have known. He was going to drive himself insane really quickly. Lance had been tortured, not a single hair on his Lance hadn't been touched, not a single hair on his head hasn't been harmed, which added insult to injury, as Keith has been holed out 3 times now and came back increasingly fucked up each time, and that was a puzzle Lance couldn't resist trying to tangle out. Step, 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 turn. There were 3 reasons, as far as Lance could figure out, they've only bothered with Keith. 1, they thought Lance didn't know anything useful. This could immediately be crossed off the list, as the commander of this battle ship was fairly high rank and had to know the value of all the paladins, not just the ones dressed in their favorite primary color. Step, 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 turn. They thought Keith would break quicker than Lance. That idea briefly flickered his mind, but it was so ridiculous, even though he hated to admit that Keith was more physically intimidating than him. Especially when he got that glare he used to stare down important. No, they weren't going for the ring of the 2. Lance was it. Step, 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 turn. They knew Keith wouldn't break, but they keep hurting him and giving him back so Lance could see, in hopes to make Lance bring to keep them from hurting him more. This is the most likely one of his options. Determining that didn't make him feel any better. Step, 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 clang. He froze in the middle of the room at the sound of the other side of the door. A moment later, the door slid open, revealing 2 drones hauling a barely conscious Keith. They tossed him forward without a care. The door closed again, and Lance scrambled to catch him. First time Keith had been taken and brought back, he'd been beaten, bruised, and bloody and fucking first. He'd been stripped of his chest was apparently used as a human punching bag, and judging by the state of his ribcage, a few broken bones to show for it. The second pin he'd been sagging, sharp-eyed edges dulled by pain. His shoulder had been out of place, and his left shin was red and swelling, probably also broken. Lance had to work quickly to get the leg armor off before it got stuck, and then tried to reset Geef's shoulder with his bound hands. He succeeded eventually, all while Geef bit holes in his lower so that he wouldn't make a sound. This time was puzzled. Geef was clearly exhausted and hurt, panting through it all points, paying him to breathe. But once Lance had gotten him settled down in his corner and tried to look at him, he couldn't seem to find anything. After a few minutes of awkward examination, Geef grunted at him, apparently unhappily, and tugged at the neck of his flight chute. Lance obliged pulling him down and had to bit his tongue to keep from exclaiming. There on his left shoulder, in the hollow part between his collarbone and neck, was a burn. No, it wasn't just a burn. It was a brown, bright, burning scarlet, white edges already blistering, was the symbol of the Galaron Empire, the same symbol that glowed purple out practically every wall and surface of these damn ships. More Geef choked before Lance could get caught of his rage and tug on his flight chute. With a gulp and no words, Lance reached around the bottom of his back of the neck and would release the chute. Carefully push it down to expose his upper arms and chest. There were more burns underneath, but they weren't burned, thank God. They were strange little red squares, lighter and not nearly as severe as the one on his neck. It wasn't until Lance noticed a little lightning-like lines coming off of them that he couldn't understand what they were, and blood filled his mouth as he bit down on his tongue too hard. They'd been shocking him. The fact that the square burns include pads mean there weren't any druids on the ship, but that was a small conclusion. He could still see Geef's muscles jump a bit from the aftershocks. Hands crawled into fish, where he braced against the wall. He couldn't let this continue. He couldn't just sit here and count steps while Geef was being tortured like this. They want to torture him too, fine. Just don't make him sit here being useless while someone else suffers for him. He was a paladin. He was supposed to be the defender. How was he supposed to defend the universe if he couldn't even defend his friends? Lance, Geef recognized that look on his face. Don't do anything stupid. His voice cracked and hoarse from screaming. If this went on soon, he would lose it entirely. Lance hadn't had the opportunity to try to light him because the cell door behind him already slid open again. His heart stopped in his chest. No, it's too soon. They will kill him if he has to go through it again. Geef saw the drones over Lance's shoulder that had came to collect him, and this time he didn't bare his teeth or tense for a fight. This time he just let his head fall back against the wall with a tighter sight, and no, this was not going to happen again. Lance wasn't going to let it. He got on his feet, planting them firmly before Geef and putting his shoulders back and face to stone. They were still more than a foot taller and twice as broad. But the anger gave him courage. Maybe that's where Geef got it from. Stand aside, one of the drones said in his metallic voice. No. Lance's voice quivered, quiet and slurred. What are you doing? You are commanded to stand aside. No, Lance. He was sweating. His breath was heavy under his chest plate. He wasn't going to stand down. He propped Geef up into a corner so the drone couldn't just go around him. If they wanted to hurt Geef again, they had to move him first. With a clack and rip, one of the drones raised his blaster, pressed it firmly into Lance's abdomen through the flight chute. He breathed, his breath stuck in, but he didn't look away. He didn't back down. Stand aside or die. No. Lance. Blaster rolled and began to charge up. Lance took a brief breath and let out. Licked his lips and closed his eyes. Then the jolt shook the entire ship, and both he and the drones stumbled off their feet. The shot went wild and ricocheted around the room, but by a struggle up, it hit another drone who shot it, sent him sprawling on the floor, making his wires spark and smoke. Lance waited no time to burst. With a burst from his jetpack, he threw himself bodily into the second drone, and they both crashed into the opposite wall. Lance felt the metal vibrate as it crunched against the wall, and when he was on his feet again, stumbled back the drone and collapsed. He turned back to Keith, who's pushing himself back up with his one good arm and sending Lance death glare that could ended Jarkon himself. What the hell were you thinking he was going to shoot? You could have died, you stupid, selfless idiot. No time for lectures, Lance said as he hurled himself across the room to his wounded teammate. The others finally got their shit together and shown up. So we gotta go. Keith shook his head, bowing away Lance bound arms as he tried to reach him. No, I can't go anyway. I will only slow you down. You have to find the others then. Not a chance in hell, Lance snarled. The argument would have continued, probably for several minutes, if a shape hadn't appeared in the doorway. The shadow loomed ominously over the both of them. Lance rolled around on the intruder, ready to tackle them if need be, only to recognize the black and white armor and the scarred face staring beneath the visor. Shiro, thank Christ! Before as much as he argued the fact of Keith, he probably wasn't strong enough to haul the entire Red Paladin out of this place by himself. Lance, Keith. Shiro rushed in the room, ready to reach out to discard Lance's cuffs. Lance smiled gratefully and rubbed the raw skin under his flight chute, which was definitely going to be hurting him later on. Her guys hurt, but Keith. The moment he said that, Shiro was gone, practically teleported across the cell to get to Keith's side. Expressions twisted into a grimace at Keith's condition, and where he was eyeing on the brown turned whiter than snow. I'm fine, Shiro tried to gloat at Shiro at his revenue right quick. I'll be fine. We have to get you back to the castle. His hands hovered over Keith for a moment as he cringed. I'm sorry, but there's pretty much no way I can carry you without it hurting. It's okay, just do it. Without further ado, Shiro hauled him up into his arms. Fresh blood ran down his chin as he bit down his lip to an attempt to muffle the scream. I got you. Lance, watch our six. We gotta meet Paige and Huck. Sir, yes, sir. Move as one unit. They left the cell and the carriage remains of the drones behind. It hadn't even been a week since he and Lance have been captured and subsequently rescued, but he only gotten out of the healing pods a day or so ago. The pod hadn't been able to heal the scars, not completely, so he was sporting several patches on his chest, a few lines on his leg from the break, but the worst one was the brown. It was just the right shade of white to stand out from his pale skin, and the location made it impossible to hide without constantly wearing turtlenecks, which Keith absolutely could not stand. So now he stood in front of his bathroom mirror, staring, trying to force himself to accept it so that he can move on with his life, but it wasn't working. It was just so Galral. And it wasn't subtle either. Sure, the mark on his blade was a Galra symbol, but only a few people knew and it was easy to conceal before. If he wanted to hide his Galra heritage, he could hide away his knife and just not say anything, and no one would know. But this was a blatant, obvious press on his skin for anyone to see. It wasn't just a Galra symbol, it was the Galra symbol, the symbol of the Zarkon Empire, the one that has a glow on the walls of the Sarkon's ship where he's been looking for Red all those months ago. They branded him in the more than just name. They marked him as property of the Empire, like a head of cattle, like a slave, and announced to anyone who saw him that at some point he'd been part of the Empire. He's been made to submit. Keith fastened his eyes on the mark above his collarbone and forced to back bell. He could still feel the sear of white-hot pain from where they pressed the heated metal to him. Hear the sizzle of his skin melting, smell it. He hadn't even tried to sleep yet, in fear it would haunt him in his dreams. Damn it, get a grip. He had to move on over this. Lance already felt guilty enough not getting them out sooner, for not being tortured alongside him. And he only feels worse if Keith let him slip. How much it actually bothered him. There was a knock on his door, and Keith turned partially without taking his eyes off his reflection. Who is it? It's Shiro. Fuck. He couldn't let Shiro see him like this. Shiro went through so much worse than he had for so much longer. He shouldn't distract him by hollering about his minuscule experience when Shiro was marked all over from his captivity. I just want to talk. But at the same time, if anyone could understand what Keith was thinking, it would be Shiro. If he could trust anybody with this, it would be Shiro. And he wasn't stupid enough to think was something he could just ignore until it goes away. Okay, come in. He halted very still as the bedroom door slid open. There was a pause as Shiro glanced around for him. Then he appeared in the mirror behind him, framed by the open bathroom door. Gray eyes flickered over him, taking in the situation. Then they softened as he took a few steps forward. Hey, Keith, hey. He hated how hoarse his voice still was after so long in the pod, but Shiro didn't even flinch or react. In the mirror, Shiro's eyes settled on the brown. This time, unlike in the cell, he didn't go pale or go into a flashback. He just took a deep breath before settling his hands on Keith's right shoulder, the one with the blade scar. Galra on both sides now. I get it. I know you do. Shiro licked his lips. I have one too. Keith turned his face instantly of his reflection, instead of his reflection, surprised, and Shiro gave him a wary smile. Before putting his back to him, slowly, Shiro gathered up the back of his shirt and exposing scars upon scars, and right between his shoulder blades was the same brand that Keith now wore on his throat. A new surge of anger indented in his belly, and he had to grimace at his teeth to keep from shouting. Branding him was one thing. He was a prisoner of war, as much as he didn't want to be. Being part Galra bonded him to the Empire in a way that he couldn't change. But to do it to Shiro, kind Shiro, who was from an ignorant planet who didn't know any better, was just unacceptable. He clenched his fist at his side as Cyril let the shirt fall and faced him again. "It's not fair," he muttered, glaring holes through the floor. "No, it's not," Cyril agreed. For a moment they just stood there, together, not needing to say anything, but there was hovering at the back of Keith's mind, determined to be known, and it was probably callous of him to ask, but he just had to know. "Do you remember?" Cyril paused. His eyes shifted an inch away from Keith's face, going as far as he searched back through his Swiss's memory. "I'm not sure." He blinked a few times, stroked his head, and looked back to Keith. "I remember some things. That might have been it, but it's kind of fuzzy. I'm not certain." Keith hummed. His question was answered. He was surprised when Cyril put his hand back on his shoulders. "Guess this puts me a step up, huh?" he asked with a sad, guilty smile on Keith's own guilt rapidly sharpening his chest. "Don't say that," he choked out, ashamed how his voice got caught up in the surprised look on Cyril's face when he said it. "Don't. You went through so much work." "Hey," Cyril put his hands on Keith's shoulder, not even seeming to notice when his thumb overlapped the lower corner of his scarf. "It's not a competition, Keith. All of us been hurt by the Empire, one way or the other." It was new since Keith joined the Blade. The others stopped saying the Galra, started saying the Empire. It was a little thing, but it made Keith want to cry with gratitude every time they did it. "All right, you don't have to pretend I understand." With a muffled sob, Keith crumpled forward against Cyril's chest, and he wasted no time in winding his arms around Keith's shoulders and tucking his head under his chin, held Keith tight, not tight enough to be constricted, but tight enough to feel safe. "You're so strong," Cyril muttered into his hair as his back shook with another silent sob. "So strong and brave. I'm proud of you." Keith raised his hand just enough into the back of Cyril's unspoken wave as his friend was here to hang on to tether him so that he didn't float away.